Now, Wacademia. Rita, the Sydney Vice-Chancellor, Mark Scott, this was the bloke around the ABC, arguably into the ground for a decade or so. Now appears to be doing much the same in the wokeness of Sydney University. Explain it to us,
Well,
Rita.
you'll be thrilled to know that Sydney University has released its anti-racism statement, because we've just been waiting for that with bated breath. And Sydney's largest and oldest university is going to be investigating its own history of racism. It wants to decolonise itself and also engage in a truth-telling process. This is part of their anti-racism statement that you would think right now what we're seeing with the virulent anti-Semitism on college campuses, not just in the US, but right here in Australia, that they should actually be reflecting on how they got to this point, not engaging in more behaviour that's going to make the situation worse. Because the way we got to this point is by this far left lunacy, this echo chamber where any dissenting views are demonised, where no one can cope with anything that isn't fit their worldview. They need a safe space from conservatives. And instead of reflecting on how damaging that is, James, they're doubling down.
Well, they're doubling down and they're using some of the, most ridiculous woke language, about anti-racism and decolonizing. This is all warmed over stuff from the United States that, has come and gone in and out of academic fashion, long ago. And now finally they're picking it up here. But I mean, the University of Sydney has really increasingly gone from being one of our premier sandstone institutions to quite a joke. I mean, because really much more what it's about these days seems to be about, churning out and making money for foreign students. Rather than actually educating people, particularly at the undergraduate level, it must be said. So this is just, more of the same from Mark Scott. He used to chair the ABC. Now he's at University of Sydney doing...
How much does he get paid?
Quite a bit, and we're paying.
It would be, if not $1 million, it'll be up close to...
And I just have to say, too, on these universities, too, on the foreign students thing, all of these universities, not just University of Sydney, we've got this huge problem with housing and everything, and there are huge problems that this mass of students coming through the country is putting on everybody else so they can make money out of it. And they are kicking up an almighty stink at the idea of having to pay a bit of a levy to contribute to the infrastructure and the burdens that their money-making schemes are putting on the rest of us.
And they're making this money from the overseas students, and it's become now a way of getting residency in this country as well. We can discuss that another time. But also, they're putting Australian students into debt for junk degrees. There are so many degrees that do not actually lead to any sort of meaningful employment.
Well, they don't. There's no jobs. Gender, rubbish.
If you want to study that, all good and well, but one, the taxpayer shouldn't be subsidising it, and the students shouldn't be sold false hope. So they should be told, this is the history of this particular course. 80% of our graduates are not actually working in that field. They may be your local barista, but they're not working in gender dance studies or whatever the hell we're giving degrees
gender
out for.
Geopolitics or whatever it is. Yeah. Now, let's decolonise. Let's start the decolonising process of Sydney University by decolonising Mark Scott. Mark Scott, why don't you resign? Why don't you resign and you go away? And by the way, I think we should also decolonise anyone of Anglo-Celtic or Anglo-Saxon heritage who donates money to Sydney University must stop today. Any families that have been donating money to Sydney University because their parents or grandparents or whatever went to that university must stop now donating any money to that university. And anybody who wants to send their kids to Sydney University, if you are of Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Celtic heritage, do not, because you are not welcome there. So that is what you are doing, Mark Scott. You are destroying one of our great institutions, as you helped destroy one of our other great institutions, arguably. But there you go. That's what the woke always do. Let's move on to look at... more university stuff. We've got divided by race. What's been happening in Chicago, Rita?
Oh, well, yes. This is a college town near Chicago, north of Chicago, and they've had fairly wide gaps in academic achievement between their different races, the black students, Latino students, and the white students. So to overcome this, they've decided we're going to have voluntary segregation. So they're going to segregate classrooms by race. It's not forced. But again, we are, in the name of so-called diversity, progress, anti-racism, going backwards, going back into sort of 1940s, 1950s mindsets. And instead of actually looking at, okay, what are the reasons why these particular student groups are underperforming? How can we get them to reach their potential? They go straight down this racial route and dividing people by race.
Well, Rita, I was just surprised to hear you say that Democrats might be in favour of segregation. Oh, wait, they've always been the party of segregation.
Yes.